Borrowing someone else's writing and presenting it to a reader can be a delicate matter. Rarely is a quotation perfect for your argument. Oftentimes, it's what's known as too fat, meaning it has too many unnecessary words, and it needs to be trimmed down. The process of trimming the fat off a quotation is also kind of a delicate process. If you trim too many words, you kind of risk altering the author's meaning. If you don't trim enough, you end up making the reader read far too many words than is necessary. This lesson in 3 parts will show you ways to handle omitting words from a direct quotation. In this first example, lesson number 1, we're not so much omitting words from a quotation as we are presenting less. So we're presenting less by writing more lead-in. More lead-in, less evidence. In all these instances, the writing is trying to support this claim that Atticus Finch tries to be a good role model for Jem and Scout. The only problem in most of these cases is that the quotations they're too long. They're unnecessarily too long. You don't need to present all of those words in yellow in order to really best support the claim. In fact, what ends up happening in these side-by-side comparisons, left side versus right side, is that you'll notice in most instances we'll be borrowing less, we'll be writing more lead-in, and the biggest thing is that if we are going to present less, that we're not presenting less in a way that alters or takes out of context someone's meaning, whether it's the author's or it's a character such as Miss Maudie. So back when Atticus shot that dog, that rabid dog, Miss Maudie had some things to say about it. In fact, if you wanted to present all of this in order to support this idea that Atticus tries to be a good role model for Jem and Scout, there's a chunk here that is completely unnecessary. And in fact, if you were to present all of this in yellow, you'd have to block it out because it's more than 4 lines of text out of the book. This writer is suggesting that, well, I don't need this. It doesn't help me in any way. Miss Maudie almost like has a hiccup in her train of thinking, and it's unnecessary. And in fact, this writer has also said that if your father's anything, he's civilized at heart is also unnecessary, meaning that we could simply summarize that part in the lead-in, present less evidence, and then make the reader have to read less in a more efficient way. So this writer has decided all this is going to go. All I need is what comes below. And here's what they end up with. First of all, not a block quotation. Miss Maudie, characterizing Atticus as a man with a civilized heart, explained to Scout why she never knew Atticus was an excellent shooter of guns. She tells her neighbor, and then here's the text evidence, and there's less of it and no longer required to be formatted as a block quotation. So in lesson 1, cut down on how much you're actually presenting, present only what you actually need to present in order to support the claim, write more lead-in and a good attributive tag, and you're in better shape than you are just presenting all of this and just kind of throwing it at the reader. This seems like it was more well thought out in terms of what text am I going to present and how am I going to present it. So lesson 1, more lead-in, less evidence. Same situation here. You can see that this writer has already written more lead-in on the right-hand side. And in fact, this writer has decided that all of this, which it was going to have to be a block quotation if we were going to present all of this, this writer has said, well, maybe I'll just summarize this in the lead-in so that I don't have to present as much. And this writer has come along with that thinking, and this is what they come up with. When Scout is in the courthouse balcony reflecting on Tom Robinson's demeanor and good manners, she, offering an explanation of Tom's predicament that day, tells readers, it's a continuation of the attributive tag. And you can see that this person has bracketed the word he in order to be more specific here. And it's no longer a block quote. So, the way you present it in terms of quotations, quotation marks changes, how you punctuate the, um, the, the markup punctuation for the citation changes as well. So this seems to be a more well thought out presentation of evidence, knowing that I just need to summarize more in the lead-in and present less text evidence. In lesson 2, it's the use of the ellipsis. Same thing, Atticus tries to be a good role model for Jem and Scout is the claim. What ends up happening here with the use of the ellipsis, which is this the dot dot dot, it solves a few problems. Number one, you present less text evidence. You can oftentimes seamlessly continue a quotation. And again, we are avoiding the altering of the direct quote, taking the quote out of context or somehow altering the meaning. So same thing, this was going to have to be a block quotation if you were going to present it all. This writer has decided this is completely unnecessary for what I need, and they like the rest of it. So they like the top part and they like the bottom part. They feel like this is exactly what I need for this argument about trying to be a good role model to his kids. So what they've done is they've taken this highlighted portion right here and have just eliminated it with the use of the ellipsis. And it reads seamlessly. It reads like this. If your father's anything, he's civilized at heart. I think maybe he put his gun down when he realized God had given him an unfair advantage over most living things. So, there's no break in terms of the way it moves, the way it flows in the writing. So the use of the ellipsis can be a great way to eliminate unnecessary text. Of course, the problem is doing it too much. One ellipsis is good. Many ellipses, probably not so good. This is in your packet, so if you wanted to understand how it's used MLA style, this is something you could check out on your own. It's at the very end of the packet. In lesson 3, it's the same idea as the ellipsis, except now we're just using another attributive tag. And in this case, she tells her young neighbor, if your father's anything, he's civilized at heart, period. It's the end of the quotation, so you have to have like the proper quotation marks, but then bang, right into another attributive tag. It's the same speaker, but in this case, the writer's just indicating a continuation of Miss Maudie's words. Miss Maudie continues explaining, I think maybe he put his gun down. So you can use the multiple attributive tags to break up a chunk that you felt, well, I don't need this. What am I going to do? Because I don't need this, but I like what's on top and I like what's on the bottom. Multiple attributive tags often work. And while the use of the ellipses works really well if the writing flows seamlessly by itself, the use of the attributive tag is a great way. If that writing does not flow seamlessly by itself and the ellipsis doesn't work, you can make it flow by adding another attributive tag. There's lots of ways to do it too. So she continues, or a moment later he says, later she tells readers, depending on how much later would be, whether or not you end up using some of these. Maybe it's a short time later. Continuing her thought, he says, then he says. So these are all good possibilities for when you're kind of bridging two chunks of a larger quote together, because you don't need maybe a chunk that's in the middle. So lesson 3, hey, use another attributive tag. Cut down on what you don't need from the direct quotation by using another attributive tag. Lesson 2, the ellipsis. The ellipsis. And finally, lesson 1, which for me shows craftiness. Your ability to write more lead-in and present less evidence means that you've really done a thorough job of thinking out how much am I going to present, and particularly how am I going to present it. So these are just three considerations for you to think about as you continue to present text evidence in this piece of writing.